Relax and listen to the voice.
Welcome back to Urban Myths, Volume 2. Here we go. The song Love Roller Coaster was a big hit for the Ohio Players when it was released in 1975. According to the urban legend, if you listen to the song around the 2-minute and 30-second mark, you can hear the blood-curdling scream of a woman who was being murdered. As the story goes, the Ohio Players wanted an eye-catching cover for their album and hired a model to pose for the picture. She was supposed to hold a jar of honey and let it drip into her mouth with a spoon. However, during the photo shoot, they boiled the honey so that it would drip more easily. Unfortunately, they heated it too much, and when the model dripped the honey on herself, she was badly burned. They say she was left permanently disfigured and unable to find work as a model anymore. A short time later, while the Ohio Players were recording their song Love Roller Coaster, the model stormed into the studio and threatened to sue them for everything that they had. The band's manager allegedly got into a violent argument with the woman and ended up stabbing her to death with a knife in the control room of the studio. And this is how they say her dying screams were recorded onto the soundtrack of the album. Of course, they say that this is all an urban myth. The model's name was Esther Cordette, and she is still alive. The high-pitched scream was made by one of the band members to add some excitement to the song. Apparently, a DJ made up the rumor about the scream and the murder, and it spread like wildfire. The urban legend made the song very popular, and the band sold a lot more records, so they never denied that the legend was true, in case it would hurt their record sales. Yikes, that sounds like a sticky situation. An old man got a job working at a toll booth on a motorway. He had to work nights and often sat alone in the booth, waiting for a car to pull up. It was a very boring job because there were not many cars traveling on that particular motorway. One night, the old man was so bored that he was almost falling asleep in his chair. Just then, he saw some headlights approaching. When the car pulled up at his toll booth, he could hear loud music blaring out from the inside. The window rolled down, and he saw a gang of 4 youths sitting in the car. The driver grinned up at him and said, "Hey, Grandpa, how much is the toll?" $2, replied the old man. "Are you kidding me?" complained the driver. "Every day it's more expensive." "Maybe," said the old man, "but don't blame me. I just work here." The driver then reached out and handed him a $5 bill to pay the toll. The old man took the money and put it into his till. "Here's your change, sir," he said, trying not to make eye contact with the driver. "What a rip-off!" said the driver angrily. "And speaking of rip-offs..." Suddenly the old man felt a strong hand grab his wrist, and a chill ran down his spine. He looked up just in time to see the driver snapping a handcuff on his wrist. Without another word, the driver floored the accelerator and took off at a high speed. As the car sped off, the old man saw that the handcuff was tied to a rope that was being pulled out of the window of the car. The old man was paralyzed by fear. He tried desperately to pull off the handcuff, but it was no use. He attempted to undo the knot, but that was also of no use, as it was too tightly knotted. He didn't know how much rope was inside the car, and at any time he expected to be yanked out of the toll booth window and dragged down the motorway, or to have his arms suddenly torn completely off. When all seemed lost, the other end of the rope fell harmlessly out of the window of the car. The youths had been playing a prank on him. The rope had really never been tied to the car. It was just a bad joke and poor taste, and the thugs wanted to give the old man the shock of his life. They say the next day, the youth were tracked down after their car had been spotted on the surveillance camera at the toll booth. They were unsure of why they were being contacted by the police until the police told them that they were being charged for murder in the death of the toll booth worker. Apparently, even after the man had seen that the rope was not tied to the car, the stress of the event had caused him to suffer a cardiac arrest, to which he succumbed. One summer, a young woman was house-sitting for a family who were away on vacation. They lived in a large downtown apartment, and she was tasked with taking care of their dog, a golden retriever. One day she came to the apartment and found the dog lying dead in the middle of the living room. When she knelt down and examined the dog, she found it had a big bone lodged in its throat. The dog must have choked to death on the food she had left during the night. The young woman was horrified and felt very guilty. After all, she thought that she had unknowingly been the cause of the dog's death. She didn't want to contact the family and have to tell them, which would surely ruin their holiday. At the same time, she had to find some way to dispose of the dog because it was beginning to decompose. She wasn't sure what to do with a dead dog. She called her father, who advised her to bring it to a vet, who would obviously know how to dispose of a dead dog properly. The girl didn't have a car, so she decided to put the dead dog in a suitcase and carry it to the vet's office, which was not that far away. After walking just over 3 blocks with the heavy suitcase, she was very tired and decided to use the subway. She carried the suitcase down the stairs and got onto the train. When she reached the station that was the closest to the vet's office, she got off the train and began trying to carry the heavy suitcase up the stairs. A young man spotted her struggling with the suitcase and asked her if he could help her with it. She accepted his very kind offer. As they were both carrying the suitcase up the steps, he asked her what was inside. The young woman felt a little embarrassed. She didn't want to admit that she was carrying around a dead dog in a suitcase, so she told him it was just a laptop and some other various equipment. Just moments later, they reached the top of the stairs. The young man suddenly pushed the woman down, grabbed the suitcase, and took off running down the street. Neither the young man nor the dead dog in the suitcase were ever heard from again. She was being robbed. She was being robbed of the dead dog because the young man thought that she had a laptop and computer parts in the case. She was being robbed. Neither the young man nor the dead dog in the suitcase were ever heard from again. There was a teenage girl who had a crush on a boy in her class. She kept dropping hints, and when he eventually asked her out on a date, she was overjoyed. On the evening of the big date, she went to the mall and bought some new clothes, and then she spent over an hour in the bathroom getting ready. The girl was running seriously late, and she still had to dry her hair and get dressed. To save time, She ran down to the kitchen and jammed a knife in the door of the microwave to keep it open. Then she stuck her head inside and set the microwave on high. A few minutes later, when her new boyfriend arrived to pick her up, he rang the doorbell, but there was no answer. He kept knocking on the front door, but all inside of the house remained silent. He called out the girl's name, but there was still no answer. Frustrated and feeling like he was being stood up, the boy walked around to the back of the house and peered inside of the kitchen window. To his horror, he saw the body of the girl lying dead on the kitchen floor. He called the police, and they came to investigate. At the inquest, when the coroner opened her skull, he found her brains had been reduced to a gray mush. The verdict of the coroner was that the girl had died due to having boiled her brain. In South Korea, there's a very strange urban myth about fans. An alarming amount of Korean people believe that fans can cause death. They think that if you leave an electric fan running overnight in a room with the doors and windows closed, you could die in your sleep. Because of this, all fans sold in South Korea come with an automatic timer that turns the fan off after a certain number of minutes. The myth arises as some people believe that fans create a vacuum and suck oxygen out of the room, which can cause someone to die from asphyxiation. Others believe that fans lower the temperature of the room, causing you to freeze to death or die from hypothermia. Unfortunately for this tale, the truth is, fans cannot kill you in either of these manners. South Korea is the only country that believes in death by fan of this magnitude. Scientists agree that fans cannot lower the temperature enough to kill you or displace enough oxygen to suffocate you. Sleeping in a room with a fan is perfectly safe. Despite the fact that many Korean people are intelligent and well-educated, the weird belief still persists. Korean newspapers even sometimes carry stories about people who have been killed by fans. Here is an example from the Korea Herald in 2011. A man reportedly died on Monday morning after sleeping with an electric fan running. The 59-year-old victim, known only by his surname, Min, was found dead with the fan directly facing him. There's a story about some American college kids who decided to play a joke on their Korean roommate. When they found out he believed in the fan death urban myth, they teased him by going to bed in an enclosed room with 6 electric fans running. He pleaded with them not to throw their lives away and slept all night in the hallway. In the morning, when he woke up and all the American kids had survived the night, the Korean guy was suspicious. "I know you're playing a practical joke on me," he said. "You must have opened a window or something during the night." However, this fan death urban myth is not that unusual. It seems that every country in the world has their own set of weird beliefs. In China, they think that sitting on a warm toilet seat will give you hemorrhoids. British people believe that sitting on cold surfaces causes hemorrhoids. In Peru, people think that standing too long in front of the fridge can cause cancer. In the Czech Republic, folks think that drinking water after eating fruit can cause stomach problems. In the Philippines, many mothers will stop their kids from wearing red clothing during a storm. They fear that it could cause them to be struck by lightning. Still, there's one thing that you should keep in mind. If you go to South Korea and place a fan in a sealed room with someone, there may be a chance that you could be charged with attempted murder. In the 1890s, a family of odd-looking people moved into a small Midwestern town in West Virginia. The family were called the Lincolns. The entire family, the mother, father, daughter, and 2 sons, were all squat and ugly with pallid, greenish skin, bulging eyes, and wide, bulbous heads. Everyone who saw them thought that they looked almost toad-like. They were sullen and unfriendly, refusing to make friends with the townsfolk and keeping mostly to themselves. During the day, they stayed indoors, but at night, they would prowl around the town, lurking in the shadows and scaring the townsfolk. Around 1900, one of the Lincoln sons attacked the daughter of a prominent local family and ended up killing the poor young girl. The townsfolk were so enraged that they didn't wait for a trial. They decided to take the law into their own hands, and an angry mob dragged the boy out to a lonely field and hung him by the neck from the high branches of a tree until he was dead. At the girl's funeral, the Lincoln family turned up, seething with rage. The father put a curse on the town and threw a worm at the dead girl's parents, crying, "Here is your doom!" A little while later, the father and mother of the girl were found dead under mysterious circumstances. Their bodies had been crushed to a pulp, and they were covered with slime. No one could understand what had happened to them, but everyone in town suspected that the Lincolns had something to do with it. After that, some people claimed that they saw the dead Lincoln boy around town. At night, there were many sightings of his ghostly apparition wandering the empty streets. Many people who saw him later went insane. There were even some rumors that the Lincoln boy wasn't really dead at all. A group of townsfolk went to the cemetery one night and were shocked to discover a trail of footprints leaving the Lincoln boy's grave. When they dug it up and opened his coffin, they found that the boy's corpse was no longer inside. An empty coffin, void of a corpse. The next day, the other members of the Lincoln family picked up and moved out of town, and no one knew where they went. For the next few years, however, the area suffered from a succession of severe droughts, floods, and tornadoes, almost as if the town had been cursed by the Lincolns. Charlie Noonan was an amateur folklorist who traveled throughout the South and Southwestern United States during the early years of the 20th century, collecting tall tales and stories of the supernatural. According to his wife, Ellie, Charlie was told a story one day by an Oklahoma farmer about a strange woman who lived alone on an isolated property in the Panhandle. The farmer claimed that the woman was not a woman at all, but something else. Something that hid its true nature beneath a headscarf and was never seen without a large dog by its side. Charlie Noonan was apparently intrigued enough to try searching for the woman during one of his research road trips. He was never seen again. Ellie Noonan was later contacted by a Tulsa pawnbroker who remembered reading about her husband's disappearance in the papers after finding his name engraved on a camera sold to him by an itinerant. The pawnbroker returned the camera, and Mrs. Noonan had the film inside developed in the hopes of finding a clue as to her husband's whereabouts. If you go to Google and type in Charlie Noonan photograph, you will find the one and only photo that was developed from that roll. Unfortunately, neither the location of the property nor the name of the farmer who told him the story was recorded in Noonan's notes. However, further research reveals that this is just an urban myth. Apparently, there is no folklorist named Charles Noonan, and there is no record of any of these strange events. This, apparently, is just an intriguing story made up by someone on the internet, inspired by the creepy photo that you will find. Back in the 1950s, the government constructed a dam on the Ohio River. A decade or two after the dam was finished, a motorist accidentally drove off of the road and his car plunged into the river beside the dam. Emergency units couldn't get there in time, and the driver was presumed to have drowned. Maintenance workers at the dam reported that one of the inflow pipes in the dam had become blocked. The dam had to be shut down for a few days, and 2 divers were sent down to the bottom to recover the motorist's body and make repairs. Only 1 diver returned. He scrambled out of the water as quickly as he could and started screaming and shouting. He claimed that when they had been trying to open the car door, they saw a huge shadow above them. When they looked up, they saw a giant catfish about the size of a car swimming above them. Nobody believed the man, but he refused to go back into the water for fear that he might be swallowed whole. As the people on the shore were waiting for the other diver to emerge from the murky waters, they saw a pair of severed human legs surface near the wall of the dam. They then watched in horror as a gigantic catfish reared out of the water and swallowed the legs in one gulp, then disappeared back into the depths. According to the theory from these people at the site, the catfish must have attacked that diver, slicing him in half with one bite, and then coming back for the rest. They say that the car is still submerged at the base of the dam because no one dares to go down and remove it. The catfish had grown to such a monstrous size because of the ideal conditions for catfish at the base of the dam, as well as the abundant food that was pulled in by the flow of the water. Unlike most hands in poker, the dead man's hand only contains 4 cards instead of 5, because you die before you receive the 5th card. In 1876, the legendary Old West lawman Wild Bill Hickok was playing poker in a saloon in the town of Deadwood, Colorado. He was dealt 4 cards in the game, and when he turned them over, he realized he had been dealt the dead man's hand. He was dead before he got the 5th card. He had been shot in the back of the head and killed instantly. His body slumped forward over the poker table, still gripping the fateful cards in his left hand. For anyone out there who may be gambling, please be advised, in order for this to work, you must be dealt the cards in this order: 8, ace, 8, ace. You see, H is the 8th letter of the alphabet, so when you get 8A, 8A, what the cards are really spelling out is ha ha. It's like the universe is laughing at you. So if you're ever playing poker and someone deals you an 8 and then an ace and then another 8 and then another ace, look behind you, because chances are you're never going to be dealt another card.
Do you believe in myths? Do you believe in fact or fiction? Go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, dearest listener.
There was a family who took a road trip around the United States. One day, they visited a national wildlife park and saw an enormous mother bear with her baby. The parents thought the bears were adorable and decided that it might be fun to take a picture of their baby with the bear licking its face. The mother took out a jar of honey and smeared it all over the baby's head, while the father got his camera to immortalize the moment. They then threw some rocks at the bear to get its attention. The bear started sniffing in the air, obviously got the scent of honey, and quietly approached the baby. The parents happily snapped pictures until the bear suddenly started mauling the baby and bit off its face. The bear ended up tearing the baby to shreds and swallowed each and every shred. According to this myth, the parents never got the pictures developed, and the roll of film has stayed in their closet forever. Pop Rocks is a flavored candy that snaps and crackles in your mouth. There was a famous commercial for Life breakfast cereal that used to air on TV many years ago. It starred a kid known as Little Mikey in the commercial. In the commercial, Little Mikey became famous as the kid who will eat anything his older brothers put in front of him. After the commercial aired, an urban legend began to spread that Little Mikey had died after eating an unexpectedly lethal combination of Pop Rocks and soda. Apparently, as the legend goes, they caused a buildup of gas inside of his body that eventually caused him to explode. This was only an urban myth, of course, since Pop Rocks and Coke or any other soda aren't powerful enough to make you explode. And the actor who played Little Mikey is still, to this day, alive and well. The funniest thing about this rumor was that it became so widespread that the company that makes Pop Rocks had to spend thousands of dollars in advertising trying to convince people that Pop Rocks were safe to eat. With all of that in mind, I wonder if anyone has ever been killed by Diet Coke and Mentos. There's a tunnel in Niagara Falls, Ontario, that locals call the Screaming Tunnel. It's located just under the old railroad tracks near Warner Road. As the story goes, over a century ago, a family lived in a large farmhouse that stood at the field at the top of the hill, close to the tunnel. One fateful night, the farmhouse caught fire. As flames raged through the building, the air was shattered by a young girl's screams. The family were trapped in the house, and they burned to death. When the fire was eventually put out, and the firefighters were sifting through the wreckage, they found the charred bodies of all of the family members except for the daughter. Searching the surrounding area, they found the burned corpse of the young girl inside the tunnel at the bottom of the hill. They assumed that she had fled from the house, her clothing engulfed in flames, running into the tunnel in a futile attempt to extinguish her burning garments. Overcome by the flames, she must have collapsed and died alone in the tunnel's depths. But they could never figure out what had caused the fire in the first place. Some say that the fire was started by a local butcher who had become obsessed with the young girl. As this portion of the myth goes, the butcher snuck up, wearing a mask, to the farmhouse in the middle of the night and set it on fire in an attempt to kidnap the girl. When she tried to escape through the tunnel, he burned her alive. Others say that it was the girl's own father who murdered her. They claim that he became mentally deranged when he found out that he had lost custody of his children in a bitter custody battle with his wife. According to this version, he lit the fire, and when his daughter escaped the flames, he chased her down and burned her to death. Whoever the killer was, everyone agrees that the ghost of a young girl still haunts this tunnel. According to the legend, if you stand in the middle of the tunnel and light a match, she will blow it out immediately, and you will hear the agonized death screams of the burning girl. The middle of the tunnel is said to be unusually cold, and people who have visited the tunnel always get the feeling that they are being watched. One person who visited the Screaming Tunnel wrote, "I am from Niagara Falls, and yeah, the stories are true. My dad was telling me that him and some of his friends went to the tunnel when they were kids. The tunnel is pitch black, and you can't see the exit when you go in. His friend lit a match, and it blew out instantly, and he heard the girl screaming. He also heard a man's voice yelling. The reason the fire started was that a man had broken into the house while the family was sleeping and set the house on fire, and then followed the girl into the tunnel and set her on fire. The reason a match will instantly be blown out in the tunnel is because the man who set the house on fire used a match to start the fire." Another person wrote, "As far as the match story goes, we attempted it 3 times, and the match did blow out, but we didn't hear any screaming." An interesting fact about the Screaming Tunnel is that a scene from the 1983 Stephen King horror movie, The Dead Zone, was filmed inside of the Screaming Tunnel. According to the urban legend, there is a ghost in the movie 3 Men and a Baby. About an hour into the movie, there's a scene where the actor Ted Danson is walking through the house. In the background, peering out through the curtains, a ghostly figure can be seen. It appears to be the ghost of a young boy standing at the window. As the story goes, the house in which the movie was filmed had previously been the site of a horrible accident. A young boy was playing with a shotgun, and it suddenly went off, discharging into his head and killing him. His horrified parents moved out of the home shortly afterwards and sold the house to a movie studio. The house was haunted by the ghost boy, and during filming, the haunting image of the dead child was caught on camera. When the movie was released and the mother saw the ghost of her beloved son, she demanded that the movie studio remove the scene. The movie studio refused, and the mother went on the Oprah Winfrey Show and the Geraldo Rivera Show to complain. Shortly afterwards, it said that she ended up going insane from the shock and had to be put into a mental hospital. Of course, this is all an urban myth. The ghostly figure is actually a cardboard cutout of Ted Danson wearing a top hat. It was supposed to be shown in a different scene in the movie, but the scene was deleted before the movie was released. If you search for these images online, you will clearly see that the ghost boy from 3 Men and a Baby is just the ghostly image of Ted Danson. A woman went vacationing in some overseas country. While lying on the beach, she fell asleep, and a spider bit her. She woke up with the side of her face a little bit sore, but attributed it only to the fact that she had been tanning and maybe got slightly sunburned. She finished her vacation, returned home, and her face began to swell, eventually forming a boil, and hundreds of tiny spiders began to hatch out of it. The woman was so horrified that she went into shock and died of a heart attack right there. Yangshi is a Chinese urban legend. It is a hopping zombie that kills you in your sleep to suck out your life force. This can be the scariest and one of the most horrifying urban legends in China. Known as Yangshi in Chinese culture, this creature is portrayed as a vampire, a ghost, or even a zombie who moves around by hopping with outstretched arms as if they are going to grab you. A Yangshi is a corpse who has risen from the dead, or in other words, reanimated back to life. They are said to kill any living beings to absorb their life force, which is also known as qi in Chinese culture. Just like vampires, the Yangshi comes out only at night and sleep in coffins or any other dark places during the daytime. These ghosts can take a range of appearances, appearing on the duration that they have been dead. Therefore, a Yangshi formed by a corpse of a recently deceased person may look like a human, while a corpse that has been decayed over a long period would look horrible, with rotting and dangling flesh. The Yangshi are depicted in cultural artifacts as a stiff corpse or a creature dressed in the official garments from the Qing dynasty. They wear a uniform like a robe, a tall rimmed hat with a round top, and a paper talisman hanging off of their forehead. Yangshi are said to have long white hair and a greenish-white skin, with fungus or mold growing on their rotten flesh. Their limbs are said to be stiff, so that they cannot bend them, and thus this justifies the hopping and outstretched arms. The origin of the Yangshi comes from a Chinese folk practice of transporting corpses over a long distance. The tale goes that once a person dies far away from home, people would hire a Taoist priest to reanimate the corpse by a ritual, and the priest would teach the corpse to hop its way back home. The story also says that the priest would ring bells before the Yangshi is transported during the night because it was believed to be bad luck for the living to see a Yangshi. It's said that this was also done because otherwise the souls of the people who die away from home would feel homesick. But in reality, the corpses were arranged upright with the sides tied to bamboo rods and were carried by two men from the front and the back. And this, when viewed from the distance, appeared as if the corpse were hopping while it was moved. There are several methods to counter a Yangshi, such as the use of mirrors, items made of peach wood, a rooster's call, hooves of a black donkey, fire, and many, many more. The use of the mirror is quite popular, as the lore says that Yangshis are scared, disgusted by, or simply do not like to see their own reflection. Though the film is quite old, for some great Yangshi content, please seek out the film Mr. Vampire, as it is a classic in the genre and does a great job of depicting the Yangshi, along with some martial arts mayhem, comedic bits, and good old-fashioned fun. And there we have it. The end of Urban Myths Volume 2. If you've got any good myths that you're aware of that we haven't covered, drop us a line, let us know. Leave a comment on this video about them. We hope that you've enjoyed this, and until next time, take care of yourselves, and always, always have sweet dreams.